I can't wait for Christmas. Okay, Christmas is nice, but I'm just saying, first day, UJIMA, what you doing? I'm here at the museum. Could you chocolate? Where you at? Charles H. Wright, Museum of African American History. And absolutely on the third day, Nsoroma night. Man, so many history, so many memories, so much history in the name of Nsoroma for me and my family. And so we're so happy to welcome you on behalf of the Museum of African American History. You all know this already, but for those of you who may not know, we are sitting and standing in the largest museum dedicated to the African American history in the world. Right here. Museum of African American History. We are here to tell your stories, to tell our stories, to make sure that our history has a place, has a home, has a place to live. Not today. We're 50 years old. This is the 50th anniversary of the museum. We're planning 50 more years. So that when these babies are elders, they can remember having come here and having years of history, years of stories. Oh, remember that time we came that KWANZAA in 2015, 2017, 2028, 2058? Yeah, I'm looking forward to all of those. So on behalf of the museum, I want to say thank you all for being here. Thank you for making it through all of that rough weather we had this afternoon. Thank you for being safe and making it here throughout all of that. And I want you to go home safely this evening, but we got a whole evening of stuff to do before we get out of here. So thank you all for being here. I'm so happy to welcome y'all here. Don't forget, we have all kinds of...
What's the news? So during this season of KWANZAA, our greeting to one another is Habari Gani, what's the news? And the response is the principle of the day. So when I was saying Habari Gani, you were giving me back UJIMA. Does anybody here know what UJIMA means? That is correct. We are celebrating the spirit of collective work and responsibility to build and maintain our community together and to make our sisters and brothers' problems our problems and to solve them together. Do any of you feel like we need some more collective work and responsibility in our community? We are more than our brothers and our sisters' keeper. Focus on UJIMA on this third night of KWANZAA. Before I continue, I would like to ask the permission of the elders in the room to proceed. Elders, do I have your permission to continue? Thank you. Thank you very much. And I would also like to take this moment to acknowledge our elders. Elders, please wave your hands. We want to see
African people developed north along the Nile River region, east, west, extending throughout the globe. We were not a landlocked people. We started off developing from the Crescent and Nile civilization, where we developed the attitudes, the aptitudes of farming, agriculture, science, technology, mathematics as we know it.
That's right.
But these skills were spread continent-wide. Too often we focus on Kemet. We have the stone cities of Great South Africa. We have the ancient traditions of Timbuktu, who are the masters of writing, memory, and science. In this, we recognize those ancient foundation stones which led to the foundation of modern society. With that, we say SHAQ. As we developed and moved throughout the globe, we began to move continentally, intercontinentally, and we recognize those early foundation builders of places like the Yellow River region. We recognize those older, early founders of what we don't know, but what we realize now is the Scottish, the Nordics. We talk about those founders of what we call the South American civilization. We talk about those founders that moved throughout the globe, setting the foundation of human culture as we know. And in recognition of that, which ties us all together, we say SHAQ. As history moved on, we reached our most recent historical apex. We found ourselves moving and found ourselves being faced with a new threat. This threat was the idea of interfighting, the idea of invaders from outside of our region, and the idea of cultural traditions fading. With this began the advent of what we know as Ma'at, that painful historical group rite of passage that led us to this point. But let us not be remiss and understand that we not for 1 second sat and accepted this circumstance. And to the early revolutionaries, before we even knew a word or understood the onslaught that was coming, we say inside. As the onslaught continued, we began more organized efforts to repel, whether we talk about the God in their movement to push out the slaves, when we talk about Queen Nzinga, the Ashanti, all those who resisted the encroachment upon our way of life and our understanding of the universe, we move forward and we recognize those early freedom fighters such as Queen Nzinga, such as Menelik or others. And in that regard, we say inside. At this point, our ancestors began forcibly being moved from the continent through force that was unnatural to us. And we were spread throughout the globe, what we know as the diaspora. But once again, the resistance continued. The resistance to reclaim and remain and retain our humanity continued. And in that regard, we began to have more historical memory of those exact folks. When we talk about the Gabriel process, or we talk about those brothers and sisters that overthrew so many ships that go unknown. We talk about those people that fought before the slave ship even arrived. They wouldn't allow themselves to be boarded. We recognize those mothers who chose to let those children die before they would be committed to enslavement. And to the countless lives who died in resistance and protection of the future generation, we sat inside. As we recognize our historical epic over here in the West, we recognize our unique situation in which we call chattel slavery. We recognize those sterling hearts and minds that kept the light alive once again. We talk about those individuals that organized the late night vigils, the late night study societies, the late night raids, the ability to understand how to work the traditional magic ceremonies when Master wasn't looking. We recognize those forms of resistance, whether poisoning the animals, burning the crops. That's right. Whether we talk about people just breaking the tools and refusing to work, we continued on and we maintained that resistance into those ancestors that whispered the cultural secrets of our people into the ears in the cabins in the dark night. We recognize them when we say inside. We moved and we continued to fight until the back of what we know as chattel slavery was broken, but we know de facto slavery continued. And here we recognize those early individuals that continue to fight by name. We could talk about Henry Highland Garnett. We can talk about Ida B. Wells. We can talk about so many more. Mary Terrell. All those other people that are not always named in the historical books, but those people that pushed for our people for a better life because they understood that though the law didn't say that we were in bondage, they understood the intention of the people that held us captive, and they continued to fight. And so from that early period, after our so-called enslavement, to the point now, we see so many people, Mary Terrell, Frederick Douglass. I'll begin to call a few out. Henry Highland Garnett, inside. We talk about Frederick Douglass, inside. We talk about the famous Grandi Nandi of the islands who organized the revolt in Jamaica. We say inside. We recognize Ida B. Wells. We recognize all of our sisters. And we can go on for hours recognizing these people. But we're going to continue on. And we move up in our historical effort. And we recognize those people that came after post-bondage, such as the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, we say inside. Those who organized and understood the idea of liberation. However fruitful it became, the notion was clear. So we recognize the early Elijah Muhammad's. We recognize the early, I'm at a loss for words thinking of everybody. We recognize the early, Booker T. Washington, inside. We recognize the early, so many others. I won't get into a mental loop because I'm going through too many names at once. But we move on. For those who remain unnamed but remain in our thoughts, we say inside. We move on and we recognize those who may be on this planet but we are not yet manifested. So we recognize the unborn. For the unborn, we say inside. And for those yet to be born, in the years to come, we ask that the ancestors guide their ways and their acts, and that we honor and guide them. And finally, we say inside, inside, inside. Ashe.
But it's not something just for children. It is for all of us.
We are children of the heavens. Shining brightly. Reflecting the brilliance of our Creator. And the genius of our ancestors. We are young champions. Unfolding our unlimited potential. By developing our spirits, minds, and bodies. We are the creators of our own reality. Striving for truth, balance, harmony, and accuracy. Consciously aware that what goes around comes around. Knowing our history and accepting our responsibility, we are ready, willing, and able to bring about a self-determined, self-reliant future for ourselves and the African world community.